What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online show. Zach Abaverdi and Nick Del Torre here, and practices are underway in Gainesville, Florida. We come to you on a Friday, a rainy day in Gainesville, in Alachua County, that is. But the Gators are still going to get in. Nick, they have an IPF now where that's not anything that's going to cause a problem like it used to back in the day, as we remember.
Yeah. This would have been a washed out, rain out, lightning out day, or they would have moved practice up. Crazy that the University of Florida, with the way that it rains in the summer, was one of the last schools in the SEC to go ahead and get an indoor practice facility. But we'll see. I will bring my rain jacket and some shoes I don't care about, just in case they want to go outside in the rain for those 15 minutes.
Yeah, we'll find out as the Gators will be having practice number 3 on Friday night. We've got a couple practices that we've seen so far. We'll get into all of that. We've heard from a ton of players and coaches. Shout out to Scott and Matt for hooking up the media with a bunch of interviews this week, getting to hear from this team, getting a sense for where they feel like they're at heading into preseason camp. And Nick, we haven't seen a lot, but we've seen enough to have some guys stand out. Notice that some look a little bit different than they did last year, and maybe even since the spring, which is, I think, to be expected given all the numbers that we heard coming out of the offseason with Tyler Miles. But we'll get into all of that on today's episode. We've got so much coverage that we've been churning out at Gators Online. I shout out to everybody that signed up recently. I know a lot of listeners of this show have been taking advantage of the promo code and been able to catch this first week of camp. If you haven't done that, head over to GatorsOnline.com. When you go to sign up, use the promo code UF1. You can get 2 months of access for just $1. We are less than 1 month away from the 2024 season. Florida versus Miami in the Swamp. I can't wait, Nick. I'm ready, man.
Yeah. Listen, just a kid from Broward County, grew up, born in 88. So I grew up in the heart of a Miami dynasty down there. This is a huge game. I think it's a great rivalry that I wish we'd get to see more often. But then just what is riding on this game, I think, for Florida. I don't know how much is riding on it for Miami. They went to the ACC more than a decade ago, and they were supposed to run it, and they've never even gone to the ACC championship game. But for Florida, what is riding on this game, I think, more intangible wise than tangible, just mentally, to get a win over a rival at home, kind of, tell you everything you believed in and worked for this summer. Hey, that was right. Our belief wasn't unfounded in this new strength and conditioning program. We got the results physically. Trey Wilson said, we got a big old mirror in the locker room. Everyone's looking at themselves because they look different from the workout program. But if you go out there and get a win on Saturday, August 31st, it's another step of belief. It's like, not only did we look good, we made somebody else look bad. And you start to get that ball rolling.
Your first year on the beat was getting to cover Florida Miami, correct? Down there.
Lost down there. Lost down in Coral Gables.
It was a great game. Not for Florida fans, but I mean the back and forth, high scoring.
That was I think I broke a story the week before, and they got yelled at by Will Muschamp, even though the story was right. Way. And then I think I'm not saying I broke the story, because I think we were all in the field when we saw Vernon Hargreaves in number 1, because he played that first game in number 16. And I think I ran back upstairs and wrote Vernon Hargreaves is wearing number 1 now. But yeah, those were my first 2 games covering Florida were who was that first game? I can't remember. Some FCS school probably, and then Miami.
Yeah. Was it Toledo? Was that the Toledo year?
Could have been
2012.
Could have been Toledo.
Toledo was in there somewhere. But we're not worried about that season. We're on to 2024. The Gators have preseason camp underway. We've got to hear from number 1 for the Gators, a new number 1, Justice Boone, on media day. We've heard from several players as well, as Nick mentioned, Eugene Wilson. We've got to hear from the coordinators. We got to hear from Tyler Miles, and got a good sense for how this team feels about the work that they've put in over the spring and over the summer. And Nick, we don't really start making judgments about this team until they put the pads on and they start hitting. And again, we only get to see a short portion of practice at the beginning before they're doing one-on-ones and things like that. But nonetheless, what was your takeaways from getting back out there on the field with this team and kind of seeing how they looked the first couple of days?
I think the first one is just it goes to, listen, I got some access to go in and watch the workouts and talk to Tyler and Jake Sankel, and I became a believer of their process and the way they go about things. And I think we saw that when you go out for a practice and there's only one guy in a black jersey, and Gregory Smith was out of the black jersey for practice too. Fletcher Westfall was in a black jersey. Non-contact is what we mean when we say black jersey. Just the fact that Florida is starting camp. Listen, it's a very physical game. You will not end the season with no injuries or not having suffered some sort of injuries, and guys playing through injuries. But to start camp with very little injuries, and it's something I asked Tyler Miles about at media day, and he was like, listen, I will let Billy Napier talk about that, any specifics, but we've been very fortunate with injuries. I just hit the woods there for you if you're listening. I think that was one thing. And also the guys just look different. I think they talk a lot about the speed. You've got two guys running 23 miles an hour, 15 running 22 miles an hour. That's moving.
And Tyler had said, coaches on staff had said that the most that they've ever had on a previous teams that they'd been on was 5.
Running 22, yeah.
Yeah. So that's 10 more for the Gators.
My dog, Jeremy Crawshaw, shout out to the punter, ran a 4.5.
Yeah, baby.
4.5. We're moving. Give me a fake punt this year, please. I think that's probably the first thing I take away. And I'm always honest. Like, listen, we have to write a lot of stuff in fall camp, and I'm excited for the season, so it's easy to write that stuff. But to be honest, what we're seeing right now, and a lot of my takeaways being early are, hey, this is what the guys look like. It's because the first 2 practices are only in helmets. Today, Friday, August 2nd, they will be in shells, which means helmets and shoulder pads. So you'll start to get a little more football stuff. I might peek over at the offense and defensive lines today because they can start getting a little more physical now that the pads are on. But that's really my takeaways are based on what do the guys look like, and what changes can I see just physically from them from the spring when we saw them going through spring camp back in what was that, March, April, to now, which is, and I think we've seen a lot of changes in size and speed across the board.
We had a lot of folks ask us about this week in our Gators Online chat, which we do every week over at Geo, and wanted to know what guys kind of stood out to us build-wise, and just kind of like you look at the guy and say, man, this looks like an NFL player. Nick and I had a player that we both named in our answer, and it was a true freshman who was a summer enrollee, and that says a lot about how much he stood out to us.
It's I've spent a lot of time watching the alien himself, Aaron Childs. I wrote yesterday that, when you come in, whether it's the spring or whether it's summer, if you're new, you're typically, in your position coach's back pocket because you're trying to learn. I remember when David Reese got on campus and he enrolled early, and the assignment was follow Antonio Morrison. Whatever Antonio, not off the field, but follow Antonio Morrison whenever he's on the field and do what he does. And it's kind of that learning process. Aaron Childs looks like a linebacker, 3rd, 4th year linebacker getting ready for the combine out there. And to me, the way he moves and his IQ and kind of his football instincts, I'm watching him. And granted, it's just 2 practices, basically in shirts and underwear out there. But I think this is a kid who, if he can pick up a little bit, he's going to be really, really hard to keep off the field, and a kid who I think if he was here in the spring, we might be talking about, can he be a starter this year for Florida?
I will say that, you know, watching him and Miles Graham just go through position drills now, we're just talking about how they look physically and how they jump out with some of their movements, man. You can tell why they were rated so highly as recruits. Like, they both stand out at their positions at inside linebacker. And I mean, you mentioned Childs and being able to play. Like, you're talking about Derek Wingo and Pup Howard being ahead of him on the depth chart that we project. But I think we both think he's going to play. Like, even with Wingo being a senior and Howard Howard looks great, by the way. Pup Howard looks fantastic, but that he looked like that back in the spring. Like, that's not new to us. We hadn't seen Aaron Childs yet. But Pup Howard looks like a freak too now. So, like, I think that when we think that he's going to start, Derek Wingo is going to play, and he's going to be, if he's healthy, he's going to be better. But I think Aaron Childs and Miles Graham are going to be hard to keep off the field, and we'll be involved in some way.
I mean, listen, we all know my St. Thomas Aquinas bias, so I will never say a bad thing about Derek Wingo. Super smart football player. Kind of like Nick Washington, though. I thought that Nick Washington was like the highest 500 IQ football player, but physically you're limited by what your body can do. And I think Derek Wingo, because of the injuries he's gone through, he just is the player that he is right now. Like, that's what he's going to be. He is not the most athletic that Florida has, but it's like getting another coach on the field when he's there. So I don't know.
Especially when you have two new guys that might not know the position.
For sure. But yeah, I don't know that outside of being a senior that Derek Wingo is holding off either of the two young guys.
Yeah. And I think that
STA pride, though.
Yeah. And I think that there's some other freshmen that we expect him to make an impact, but those two stood out. Some other guys that impressed Nick and I mentioned Pup Howard. Shout out to Brian Taylor Jr., who's made the move from edge to defensive line, which means he's with a totally different group. He has a different position coach. He's going to different position meetings. He's with different teammates. But he looks great at the defensive line. He's bulked up and looks like there's a reason why they moved him from that F position at the edge spot. Now he's playing end with Joey Slackman, Caleb Banks, and Kelby Collins as well. So I like that move for Brian Taylor. He looks the part. LJ McCray, and both of them, LJ McCray and Cam James, man, like, you stand next to those dudes, holy cow. They look very impressive. You can see why that F position is just so stacked. That's going to be a 4-man rotation this year, Nick. Like, Boone, Sapp, McCray, James. You're going to see all 4 of those guys rotate and have different opportunities and packages to go in on certain downs. We'll see how that plays out and what that looks like, and maybe more different guys will get more playing time as the year goes on. Mm-hmm. But those two are very impressive. And then some of the guys that you wrote about, Nick, in our live chat, obviously we said Childs looks the part. Eugene Wilson has put on some good size. We'll talk a little bit more about Eugene Wilson here. Montreal Johnson, shout out to the other number 1 on offense. He looks great. I agree. Trayon Webb has gotten bigger. Jaden Baugh looks like an NFL running back. Nick, I don't think you were the only one that said that when you saw him going through workouts and stuff. And then Cam Jackson, he's really put in some work this offseason. I think was listed at 374 in the spring, and now he's down to 340-something, 342. So he's really made a lot of progress on that front, as has Cormani McClain doing the opposite, putting on weight. He's listed at 175 on the roster. I think the last that we heard, Nick, he had put on 12 pounds since transferring to UF.
Yeah.
Which means he was 163 when he got to Gainesville. Now he's at 175. Probably has the frame to put on, at least 15, 20 more pounds. I mean, he could carry 200, I think, if he got up there. But it's obviously a work in progress to get him to the point where you want him to play as an SEC corner. But he's already made progress on that front. And those are some of the guys that, again, we're just talking about 2 days of practices and viewing periods that we've got to see. But just from a physical standpoint, those are some of the guys that caught the eyes of Nick and I.
Yeah, and I think the Cormani deal. So many people. It's so funny. So many people. I had someone today ask me about, like, hey, is Jackson still playing? Like, yeah, he's cornerback 3. We're just answering questions about guys we'd asked about. And we'd asked about Cormani 5 times a day. And I don't think Cormani is going to play a ton this year. I think it's kind of almost like a redshirt year as you kind of acclimate and grow. I mean, what did he weigh last year when Deion just threw him on the field at Colorado? It might have been weighing like 155, 160 pounds. And you're like, hey, go play D1 college football, which is tough. So
started.
He's already
4 games. Yeah.
He's already put on weight, and I think, like you said, I think they want to get him in that 185 range, but his frame, you could see him at 200, and he's a totally different person at 200 pounds. Super talented. Just, and what we're hearing is he's doing everything right. A little adjustment period, I guess, as many of us would have when we were 18, 19 years old, but figuring things out. And I think one of the areas where I'm higher on Florida is that secondary. And I think listening to Jason Marshall talk about Asa Turner, and Jason Marshall spoke with us, Zach, and mentioned, hey, like at some point last year, lost some confidence, which clearly, based on the way he was playing, you could tell. And maybe some of that is just like one of the guys behind me last year was 18 years old. And they threw him into the deep end, took his floaties off, threw him in the deep end, and said, hey, go play center, or go play safety in the SEC and play more snaps than anybody else on defense as an 18-year-old in Jordan Castell. And he played well, but there were issues, young issues, growing pains, things like that.
Then you had Bryce Thornton start 4 games as well.
Before that, the guy next to him led the team in missed tackles. So you're a cornerback, and you're thinking, if someone gets past me, it's a touchdown, because we got a freshman who's just learning and a guy who can't spell tackle, let alone complete one. You start putting more pressure on yourself. And the way that Jason Marshall was talking about Asa Turner, you're bringing in a guy with thousands of snaps. He came in ready to play, ready to prove that he can play against SEC level competition, then go and get drafted. That level of comfort allows you to have more confidence and play with more confidence. And I think we saw that from Jason Marshall, just the confidence he had standing on a podium, which is not normally something he's good at or enjoys doing.
Best interview we've ever got from number 3. I mean, he was impressive, and he's confident now, boy.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's something.
Yeah,
we've talked a lot about, and you've talked a lot about Asa Turner, just in terms of, hey, I think he's a really good player, and he will play well. And maybe I didn't realize until hearing Jason Marshall, like, oh, it's not just that. It's also because he's such a veteran, the other players on the field have more confidence in him, which will then affect how they are able to perform and play. And I think that's something that popped into my head yesterday, listening to Jason Marshall talk to us.
Yeah, because last year you're talking about Jordan Castell, Miguel Mitchell, and then Bryce Thornton after there was a lineup change. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about a true freshman, a true sophomore, and then another true freshman in the starting lineup. 2 true freshmen at one time. And Castell and Thornton starting 4 games together, which shout out to those guys for being able to go out there and trial by fire in the SEC as starting safeties. And again, Castell played well and led the team in tackles, but he had his growing pains as well, because you're a true freshman starting in the SEC at safety. Those aren't going to be things that he goes through this year. And the fact that you've got a senior back there in Asa Turner, and don't forget DJ Douglas and Bridges as well. I mean, you're talking 3 redshirt senior players that you added from the transfer portal. That just raises the competition, that like they talk about competitive depth, they got it at safety for sure. And as we heard from Ron Roberts this week, Nick, they have played all 3 of those redshirt senior safeties at nickel at one point or another, including Asa Turner. Now, they feel very confident about Sharif Denson and Aaron Gates at that star spot, but it just goes to show you the ability, the versatility that all 3 of those guys bring, and why they were so important to add to what was a very young secondary, and makes life a lot easier for Jason Marshall and Devin Moore, who Nick, according to Eugene Wilson, is a future first-round pick. And I don't think he's the only one that's high on that guy.
No, the best ability is availability. Devin Moore has been available for half of the games the Florida Gators have played since he enrolled. But you're talking about a kid who's almost 6'4", 200 pounds, long, lean, runs, flips his hips, can mirror. It's like frustrating. And we spoke with him right after the spring game. And he talked about, how frustrating it was for him to have to go through the injuries. Obviously, it was the shoulder injury his freshman year, Zach, where it was a pre-existing thing. It was going to have to happen. It happened after a couple of games. And then last year was just a number of things. It was, it was, I think, a concussion. It was an illness. I think he had like mono or something, or a strep throat, like just missing games for a number of different reasons. But getting him on the field, a confident Jason Marshall and a Devin Moore who's healthy and playing to his ability, that's a really, really good secondary on top of, Jakeem Jackson, Dijon Johnson, and Asa Turner, DJ Douglas, Traquise Bridges. Like that. It's a really good secondary for Florida.
Yep, and that's something that had to get better given the way Florida's pass defense performed and the lack of interceptions that they had in 2023.
Three interceptions. So, Florida and Temple, worst teams in the country.
Yeah, no bueno. So those are some of the guys and positions that have caught our eye. Like Nick said, we're not going to really delve too much into the line of scrimmages until they start putting those pads on. Right now, you see them here from the first couple practices. If you're watching on the Gators Online YouTube channel, you're seeing
there.
Yeah, you're seeing some looks there from the first 2 days. Look at Jaden Baugh, number 13. He does not look like a true freshman. So that's another position that is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We've talked about on the show. We've wrote about it on the site. Is the running back distribution of carries now that Trevor Etienne is no longer in that rotation, and Montreal Johnson went from getting half of the carries now. What percentage does he get? Who is kind of going to be the second and third and fourth running back in that rotation? And Nick, that can kind of take us into the first kind of storyline takeaways that we talk about from the first couple practices, because I think that's something that jumped out to me and both you, is how they had the drills going. Now, again, this is not something that they want highlighted from these viewing periods. Definitely not something that they want reported. And I also think that it's not something that they I don't know. I don't know how much stock that you can put into it, Nick, because they know that fans are watching these clips coming out from the viewing period. They know that opposing teams are watching these clips. They know the media is watching these clips. So I think that they're probably cognizant of maybe the order that they have, that they're choosing to show to the public. Maybe they aren't thinking about it, and what you see is exactly what you get, and that's what the rotation is. Do they switch it up once we leave? We don't know. We won't delve too much into the rotation yet, but like Jaden Baugh, from what we've seen, has been the last guy repping in drills. Is that where we think he is in the rotation, Nick? Absolutely not. Is he running there is he there because they want to kill some of the hype that he has gained from the spring game and get that down a bit? Did he miss a weight this week and that's why he's running at last? Did he show up late to something? And I'm just speculating here. We don't know that. But it's just, I don't read necessarily too much into.
Yeah, you're not speculating about him. You're just like, hey, that's a reason why you could get dinged or get moved in practice. Hey, if you showed up late to getting your ankles taped for practice, hey, guess what? You're in the back of the line today.
Yep. But he's a guy that we expect to maybe be second in line at some point this season, or at least be in contention for it. Now, Trayon Webb is the backup running back, and I don't think that's going to change in fall camp. Even if one of these guys really perform well, like Webb is kind of, to me, from everything that I've heard, put himself in that position to be the number 2. But it's not just going to be a 2-man rotation at running back, and they've got some talented guys, including, shout out to Jacoby Jackson, Nick, because he's repping maybe higher in the rotation than we expected. Obviously had a great spring game, and I think was somebody that maybe most counted out at the running back position, and I don't necessarily know that would be wise to do at this point. I think that we're going to see Ba, but how much and how much does KD Daniels get to play as well? That might depend on how much carries go Jackson's way, depending on how he keeps progressing, because based on what he did in the spring, Nick, he was one of the maybe surprise players that came out of camp.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting. My biggest thing here, as we put some running back clips up, what's the run? To me, the biggest question I've had, and I've talked about this a ton, what's the shakedown, or what's the breakdown of the reps? Montrell and Trevor Etienne took about 92% of the running back carries. So there were obviously, 2 years ago, Anthony Richardson had his fair share of carries, and you get some receivers, sweeps and stuff like that. But in terms of running backs carrying the ball, the lion's share was 2 guys. Now you don't have a clear 1A, 1B. You have a clear 1, a clear 2, and then you can shuffle guys around. They're competing for that second spot, for that third spot. Does that mean Montrell gets 85% of the running back carries? Does he get 80? And then you get 20. Does he get 70%? So that's really what I think is still to be determined. And the only people that are going to determine that are the running backs themselves and what they're doing in the weight room, what they have done in the weight room, and what they're doing on the field now. Because I think you have to get to a point where the coaches trust you enough. Because listen, this coaching staff, Jabbar Jalouk and Billy Napier, have been with Montrell for 4 years now. If you're playing EA college football, that coach trust with Montrell is through the roof. So you're not surpassing it. But you have to get to a point where you're like, okay, we trust to take Montrell off the field and to put you, Jaden, Trayon, KD, Jacoby into the game instead of him. So that's something to me I've been super interested in. I think I'm the only one talking about it. I might be the only person, fan, writer, anyone talking about it, but I think that's something that's super interesting to me. What is the breakdown of the running back carries?
Yeah, and to that point that you just made about the trust factor, I think that's where Trayon Webb probably has the advantage over some of the other guys, especially the freshmen, just because he's been here longer, got experience last year as a true freshman himself, and is just a guy that the staff glows about. He's one of the best players in their locker room. He helps them with recruiting. Like he is one of their guys. And, I think that it's a good problem to have. Let's just say that. I think that you can look across the board, both offense and defense, and really see some positions where there's going to be some stiff competition for reps, maybe not 100%. For a starting role, but maybe for backup roles. And that's what practice for. You heard Billy say it at the start on the first day that this is going to be his most competitive camp since he's been at the University of Florida in year 3. So we're looking forward to it. I know that one thing that Nick wanted to see on the first day, and you guys just saw clips of it if you're watching on the Gators Online YouTube channel, was Jack Piper. Shout out to him, a guy that has put in work. Billy praised him, I think, in the weeks removed from his injury, just about his attitude and his approach. And Nick, he was out there day one, and I think you'd be hard-pressed maybe to find players out there that have been able to recover as well as he has from this injury, just in the time frame. He's back quick.
270 days. It's crazy because you look and listen, everyone's injury is different, but and not to pick on him because you can get setbacks. I mean, look at Jaden Hill. Jaden Hill had the ACL, I think, in high school, then the other ACL and then MCL, and you can have setbacks throughout. But like Keon Zipper is going on a year and a half from knee surgery, and just and does not, to me, look like the same player that ran through somebody's chest in Knoxville, 2 years ago. Watching Jack Pyburn, I think I was impressed just from the clips Jack was putting out of like squatting and doing all this rehab stuff. And he's putting them on his Instagram and on his social medias. I'm like, dang, I don't know if you're supposed to be doing that stuff yet. But he clearly just attacked his rehab the way that he would attack, a workout if he were healthy or a practice if he were healthy. And you're seeing what that kind of attitude looks like, because it's lonely when you get hurt. You're gone. You're not traveling. You're not around the team. You're not at practice. You're getting rehab. You're scooting around campus. Getting in and out of bed is hard. Sleeping sucks. Everything hurts. You're not a member of the team anymore, or can feel like that. So the fact that he was able to compartmentalize all that and get his work done, I think it's a testament to him, really. And you can only, shout out to the doctor and the training staff, but it's a testament to Jack Pyburn and how hard he worked to get back to where he is.
No doubt. And another guy that's made that progress as well is Justice Boone, out there without a brace. He's made his recovery as well. Had a little bit more time, but again, that's never an easy injury to go through. And there's other guys on this team, unfortunately, that have dealt with injuries as well and haven't had the same type of success in their recovery. And as Nick said, every injury is different, and some guys go through much more severe cases than others. So the fact that these guys put in the work and effort and all that it takes to be able to recover, it's a testament to them and their commitment, because I know Nick and I would probably tap out. It's tough. So shout out to Pyburn and all the other guys that have been working their way back. One other topic I want to get into, Nick, before we kind of put a bow on this episode, is Eugene Wilson. And there's a lot that we can talk about with him. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to myperfectfranchise.net. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner, and helps people find franchises that fits their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership with franchises, you can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net, or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. Nick, we got to hear from Eugene Wilson the first week of camp. It's our second time meeting with him since he's been on campus. We got to hear from him in the spring as well. I was not able to attend that day, so it was my first time ever getting to talk to Trey. And I think one storyline and one thing that fans have been really harping on since last year is his touches per game. That was something that Russ Callaway was asked about on Media Day, which he gave a great answer to. Something that we've been monitoring since he started to play more as a true freshman. And look, this staff has shown that they can get him the ball, that they can feed it to him right out of the gate. The Tennessee drive, the first drive against Georgia as well. Like, we've seen it. Now, this year, there's some new wrinkles in there because, one, Ricky Pearsall's out of the mix. So you're talking about 65 or 61 catches for Trey last year, what Ricky Pearsall had 65. And how that now, what that workload goes over to his plate, how much more does he get targeted? How much more does he get focused on by opposing defenses, which are also, because of Ricky Pearsall no longer on the team, Nick, Eugene Wilson might be your punt returner. So now he's getting some work over there. Obviously, everyone knows that plays that NCAA 2025 game. You got to worry about wear and tear, and what that can do on your players that are not only playing receiver, not only on punt return, but you're bringing him on jet sweeps and pop passes and all type of stuff. His usage, Nick, and what that looks like in 2024 is also one of the top storylines for this team. And I think based on the first two practices that we've seen, though, he looks like a guy like that physically can take on more of a workload.
Yeah, I mean, he's up 13 pounds. I'm going to go ahead and play this little clip. Here he is playing outside, if you're watching this on YouTube, playing outside. Dime ball from Graham Mertz, Sharif Denson here in coverage. Just catching a ball on top of somebody's head there. It's really good. I think Trey Wilson will be interesting to me. How do you play him? Because I think Tim DK can play in the slot, and I think what we saw Ricky Pearsall really do his last year at Florida, and then specifically at the Senior Bowl, was say, like, listen, yeah, you've got a lot of tape on me playing slot, but I can play outside. I can do this as well. And that was a huge reason. His week at the Senior Bowl really showing all 32 teams that he can play outside. He's not just a slot receiver, small interior guy. Help raise his draft stock. And you're crazy if you think that Trey Wilson didn't see that, doesn't know that, and hasn't made it clear that, hey, I'm going to do whatever the team needs me to do, but I think I can help the team outside as well. And the biggest thing to me was all before the spring, I kept saying, hey, I think Eugene Wilson's great, but you need to get some other pieces around him. And if you don't, it becomes like 2020 when Kyle Pitts had that nasty hit, gets concussed against Georgia. All of a sudden, now it's a lot easier to cover Kadarius Toney. You can start sending a safety over, having a linebacker throw a shoulder into him right off the line to disrupt the timing. Now with Elijah Badger and Shamiri DK, I think you've got other guys who can jump into the slot. Badger can play in the slot. Chim can play in the slot. You can move Trey around now so that teams have to figure out where he is, and you also have guys who are threats of their own. So keying in on Trey Wilson became a lot harder because of what Florida was able to do in the transfer portal.
Yeah, that's a great point, because if you didn't have those additions and you don't have Ricky Pearsall, that's making life a lot easier on a defensive coordinator. And there's a lot of wrinkles that they can add, Nick. I mean, you talk about what they got at the tight end position now. Man, if Boardingham is great on that NCAA game, like, golly, if they can use him, if he can be that productive in real life this season, that's going to be a weapon. Obviously, he was for the Gators last year. They like where both he and Hayden are at the tight end spot. You've got more at receiver in terms of veteran presence there, and not so many young guys, although the young guys, they've made a jump. You know, we saw Andy Jean make one of the catches of the day from that first day. I think Khalil Jackson also had a great catch from Wednesday as well. But there's just there's a good nucleus there, I think. But Trey Wilson, obviously, it starts with him. As Napier said, he's at the top of the list in terms of their get-it-tos. But, man, you work in some of the guys that you got at receiver, at running back. You know that they're going to sprinkle in DJ Lagway at some point. You're going to get some packages with him. That's a lot for defensive coordinators to have to prepare and get ready for. Between all those different guys, and we expect Badger to emerge, of course, and be one of Florida's top receivers too. But as we have said, Nick, for weeks on the Gators Online message board, and some of our board members don't want to hear it, K-Jack is also one of those top receivers too.
Propaganda. Your propaganda, Zach. We've been accused of propaganda. It is what it is, man. We're just telling you what we are being told.
Messenger. Yeah, no. They know it's not propaganda from us.
Don't yell at the mailman because your electricity bill was high. He just brought the bill to your house. He didn't run the fan and the AC all month.
Yeah. But that's a lot, obviously, of offensive talk. We've gotten to some positions on defense, talked extensively about the secondary. But Nick, just your top takeaways overall from the defensive side, just from what you've seen so far. And obviously we got to hear from Ron Roberts too, which I think is going to make a huge impact on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it's the big thing with Ron Roberts was or any of the defensive coaches. I mean, I mentioned it on our show last week. Will Harris, talking to him right after that early signing period. He got his iPad ready, flying to California to look at his secondary. And I don't know if the plane had landed in LA yet before offers were going out to guys who can tackle. And Ron Roberts comes in, and I mean, his eyes must just have like bugged out of his head watching film last year. Florida tackled like a flag football team last year. And it's just, you're not going to play good defense if you can't do the fundamentals right. And if you're playing tackle football, the first fundamental is getting the guy with the ball on the ground as quickly as possible. So I think, to me, it's what they've focused on right away. Tackles, getting pressure on the quarterback, and takeaways. Those are the things. And staples of Ron Roberts' defense will be or have been taking the ball away and putting pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah. And I think that they've got more guys to rush the quarterback this year. I think they've got more guys to tackle better, namely Pup Howard and Asa Turner, who were graded out very well as tacklers last year at South Carolina and Washington, respectively. And then you've got more players in the secondary that can make plays and get interceptions. Obviously, Jason Marshall and Devin Moore being at the top of that list. But they like Sharif Denson, who had a pick in the spring game. You're obviously adding experience with Turner back there. We're going to see Douglas and Bridges play as well. Like, there's more potential playmakers on that back end. So those three things that they want to accomplish, they have the pieces to do it, just on paper. But that's what Ron Roberts has said, right? Like, he said that dating back to the spring, like, our players are good enough. Like, he said that twice now, and they just got to get these guys to do those three things that Nick just said, but really come down to tackling better and playing with more fundamentals. And those two things are areas that you struggle with when you are a young defense and when you're playing as many true freshmen as they did. And that's not something they're going to go through this year.
Yeah, even the young guys like Jordan Castell on paper, young, sophomore. If you turn the paper over, you'll see that he played 600 snaps last year. So, like, not a sophomore. But I think you kind of go through those growing pains. I've told this story before. In Little League, where I grew up in Weston, you kind of draft, you get assigned a team, and then you draft players. And the team my dad was assigned only had 2 12-year-olds back, and he drafted all 11-year-olds. And we were young. We were still good, but we were young that first year, and we didn't win the league. The year when we came back the next year, we were all now 12-year-olds. Our entire team was older and experienced. So we had taken some growing pains, taken some lumps that first year. That next year, it was about taking names, and we went undefeated. And I think Florida has gone through that year, my first year of Little League at Weston, where, hey, we're young. We're going to be talented. We're talented, but there is an age gap here and an inexperience gap. Those won't be excuses. And I know people didn't want to hear it last year when you pointed out, like, hey, yeah, listen, they're starting 5 freshmen or sophomores on defense. So you're going to have some bad plays. They are young this year, but it's a young, experienced defense. And then they added 6,000 snaps of experience through the transfer portal and older guys. I'm cautious, not even cautiously. I'm optimistic about Florida's defense this year. We'll see if that, if they make me look like an idiot or if they make me look right. But I think Florida's defense will look vastly improved in 2024.
Well, I think we expect that Florida's special teams will look the same. One reason that should happen is because of the rule change. If you speak with those coaches who were part of that staff last year, they will point to those restrictions that were on analysts as the root of a lot of the issues that they had and that we saw and became such a problem. We can't obviously close this out without addressing special teams. We got to hear from Joe Houston. We got to hear from Jeremy Crawshaw. And I think one of the biggest storylines that came out of that first day, Nick, was the special teams mat, which will now be used on the sidelines. And that right there is going to eliminate some issues. But again, I think the most important thing will be Chris Couch and Joe Houston being able to directly talk to the players, instruct them on the sidelines without having to hide it or beat around the bush. And as he said, not having to tell things to the coaches, but tell them straight to the players. But I will also say, based on what I thought was the most important story that came out of that first media day, which I wrote, was about the discipline that's been installed, the things that they've done with the team through Tyler Miles, making guys show up on time, facing penalties for being late, having to run at 6 a.m., having to meet a weight goal every week, and you get penalized if you don't do that. To me, that type of discipline, and then getting, 55 guys that were named Swamp Kings that never showed up to anything late during the summer, met their weight goal every week, did all these things that they set for the first time in an offseason under Napier. This is the first time that they did those things. To me, those type of actions and those type of results will lead to less of those issues that you had on special teams last year. Not getting 11 on the field, 2 guys going on with the same numbers. To me, it's not just the analysts now being able to coach, although I do think that is a huge factor and was last year. But I also think this will be a more disciplined football team that won't commit as many penalties and make as many dumb errors, not just on special teams, but in general, because of all the things that have been installed this year, this offseason, should I say.
Yeah, the mat is listen, I get it. It's going to be memed. It's going to make jokes. I literally sat here screaming to use it last year. I looked up the price on Dick's Sporting Goods, and they had one in Gainesville. I was like screaming, like, hey, listen, you have a very fixable, silly problem. Just fix it. And it's a mat that they use in Pee Wee football, they use in high school football, they use in college football, D1, 2, 3. They use it in the NFL. There's a lot of moving pieces, and depending on when you're punting or kicking or punt, block, field goal block, you're using different personnel based on yardages, distance, things like that. It's just easy to have a very clear visual representation of, hey, we might need 15 guys, but right now here's the situation. You 11, you're on that, or you 10 are on that mat because we're going to need a punter or a kicker. You don't even need a mat with 11. You hopefully would send the punter or kicker out on a field goal or a punt. But it's something that's so easy, and I get the jokes, but literally NFL teams use it.
Yeah,
it's just easy to organize on the sideline while a bunch of other stuff is happening.
Yeah, like you said, obviously the NFL teams have the capacity to make that same mistake, which is why they put that mat on the sideline. So that will be there for Florida. The coaching will be there from the analysts. I think the team will be more disciplined. Nick, this might be the last time that we talk about special teams And I
There
think
you go. I will talk about special teams, especially my guy Jeremy Crossshaw, left off the Ray Guy Award list, despite being the active FBS leader in net punting yards. Hope it was just a clerical error, but also hasn't punted enough times in either of the last 2 years to even qualify for the Ray Guy Award, which I have a vote. Just want to point that out. Vote for the most important award handed out annually.
Easy. Yeah, but again, I think most Florida fans would hope that moving forward this year, we aren't talking about special teams much other than to highlight the new returners that'll be on punt return and kick return, which Joe Houston named 8 guys or 10 guys, I think, that are in the mix for that. I'll run through that list for you guys real quickly, but yeah, besides that, and if the special teams units make a game-winning kick or block a punt or something like that, we shouldn't be talking about that much this year. And I think all Florida fans would be happy with that. And yes, the guys in the mix as the returners, the Gators lost their punt returner last year and their top kick returner and Ricky Pearsall and Trevor Etienne on kickoff return. The guys in the mix are Eugene Wilson, Shamir DK, Montrell Johnson, Tank Hawkins, Jaden Baugh, Aaron Gates, Elijah Badger, Aiden Mizell, Trey Webb, and Jacoby Jackson are all the guys that were in the rotation in the spring and that they'll continue to have in the rotation moving forward. So that's a competitive group. Would love to see Tank get a chance to take one to the house. So we'll get to see that. But yeah, special teams, I think, for a lot of reasons, should be in a better place in 2024.
From your lips to God's ears.
To Nick's delight, it would be. So that'll do it for this episode of the Gators Online Show. Before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to Prairie Dental Center. The doctor's a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide better care for his patients. If you're having dental concerns, just need a cleaning, want to get some Invisalign, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of options to meet your needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. And that will do it for us. Again, use that promo code UF1 if you're not subscribed to Gators Online so you can catch up with all of our coverage. Also, for those listening and watching on the Gators Online YouTube channel, we have a new feature, Gators Online Plus, where you could get access to premium content, interviews, analysis, ad-free, just $3 a month. So jump over there and join that as well. And be sure to like and subscribe because we got a lot of videos coming to you guys this fall. Stay tuned. Stay locked with Gators Online. Stay locked with our message board. A lot of action coming over the next few days. Nick, we're back, baby.
Season's back, ready to go.
That's right. So we're going to get ready to head over to this practice field, see what the team is looking like here on this Friday night. And we'll be back with you guys next week with another episode of the Gators Online Show. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Alberti. We'll see you guys next time.